This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1839, Top 5 George Perez Projects.
Welcome to Comic Geek Speak. I'm Ian Levinstein.
I'm Adam Murdo.
I'm Shane Kelly.
I'm Chris Eberly.
One of these days, I'll actually remember the order I set right before we hit record.
I thought that, but that's okay.
It's all good. It's all gravy. Welcome, everybody, to the show here. And an episode that is, timely for many a reason, and one that most certainly has to be done in order to honor the man. George Perez, easily one of the most seminal artists in comic book history, period. And here we are celebrating his many, many works in a top 5 format.
Consider this our contribution to the ongoing long goodbye being uttered by the comics-loving world in toto to the man while he's still among us.
Absolutely. And for those of you who have not checked out what Peter's been doing over on his podcast, The Daily Rios, he's been putting together a bunch of episodes in tribute to the man with various guests, including one of them that's on this call. I'm talking about Shane. That's all been excellent. And again, head over to the Daily Rios to find out about that. And as Murd mentioned, there's been tons of other podcasts that have been celebrating George as we all should. And now we get into that game. And
yeah, that was a lot of fun.
I'm glad. Who else was on that one with you, Shane?
Oh my God, I'm not going to even try to remember at the moment because I couldn't if I tried at this very second.
No worries. Head to the Daily Rios and find out more.
Yes, it was the first one that he did.
I know it's been a few weeks now. I'm not asking you to remember every single thing that comes into your brain.
Yeah.
All right, all good. Let's also thank you, the listeners, over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. Real quick, thank you so much for your continued support of the show. As you make this show happen, and we thank you all significantly for it. And we'll continue to thank you for it on every single episode at the top and at the end. So patreon.com/comicgeekspeak.
Agreed.
So much for that. Donations are also available on the Comic Geek Speak site at comicgeekspeak.com/donate.php. And if you do not have the monetary availability to donate, don't worry. You can just spread the word or head to iTunes and give us a review, or let Spotify know that we're awesome. Like any of the many things that are available for you on the internet. And that's that. So thank you so much, fans and listeners. You rock. All right, let's go over our usual spiel here for the top 5s. And it's pretty simple. It's our top 5s, and that's it.
We deem it whatever we feel is necessary.
Exactly. We're going to go over them one by one, and then we'll go into further depth once we do so. And we will rotate until we've gone through all 5 picks. And then if we have any alternates, we'll go ahead and throw those out at the end of the episode as well.
Yep, these are always entirely arbitrary. We reserve the right to reverse our own at some time. If we did this again within months or years, we may come up with different lists.
Tomorrow.
Your mileage may certainly vary, but if so, please don't hold that against us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Our hill, our beans.
Especially with so much to pick from.
Oh my God, yes. A man who's been working in the industry since the late 70s and so many different books for so many different publishers over the years. I'm sure that, and I hope that our listeners post their own top fives, whether it be on the forums or on the supergroup, or send us an email or what have you, and let us know about some of the experiences you've had with George Perez over the years. And I'm sure at least once or twice in this episode, we're going to mispronounce his last name. We're going to have to put a quarter in a jar because that's the way that works.
And we might even overlap.
Exactly. And on that note, onward to our top fives. Murd, what is your number 5?
All right. My number 5 on my list is the one that I feel fairly will not be overlapped. It may be the only one, but it is Thunder Agents from 1984.
Oh, wow.
Nice. My number 5, which I'm fairly certain will not be overlapped, is George Perez's Sirens.
Oh, that's a good one too.
From Boom Studios.
Yep. Shane, your number 5.
I am going to say the Avengers 30th anniversary poster.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. That's a great selection.
I bought off eBay and is hanging on my wall right over there.
Nice. And Chris?
I'm not sure if I'll go with the title I think it's known by, but it was an issues of Marvel fanfare featuring the Black Widow called Web of Intrigue.
Oh.
Okay, very good. All right, Murd, the floor is yours.
All right. This is kind of a buried treasure that I unearthed at a convention. I'm not even sure which one. It was some years ago. It was a 5-issue run of a series of featuring the lesser known but fondly remembered by some Silver Age comic book characters, the Thunder Agents. Thunder being an acronym for the Higher United Nations Defense Enforcement Reserves. They were created by Wally Wood, and they were published originally by Tower Comics, which was kind of a third publisher back in the 60s. They're always an interesting concept. There were a bunch of memorable characters thrown together in this team. There was... let me see. There was Dynamo, No Man, which is a scientist who projected his consciousness into a series of androids, so he was effectively immortal. There was an undersea agent. There were a speedster named Lightning, and they were all the kind of UN shock troops, except with costumes and superpowers, put together by Wally Wood, who was notoriously kind of cynical and not so fond of the way that superheroes were traditionally handled at the big two. So this was his own take on them. And in 1984, a startup called Deluxe Comics. Well, the person who founded that company believed that the characters were in the public domain and he could do what he wanted with them. So he used whatever contacts he had and put together a really impressive slate of creative talent at the time, including Keith Giffen, Steve Ditko, Jerry Ordway, and George Perez, to put together several extra-sized monthly issues of a comic book series about the Thunder Agents. Unfortunately, 5 issues was all he was able to put together between legal pressure he got from another publisher who just a few years earlier had done something with the Thunder Agents and claimed he still retained the rights. And also there was something about the publisher claimed he was being stiffed by distributors or something. I don't know all the details. But anyway, the first 2 issues of this series featured a strip written by Dan Thomas, wife of Roy, and with art by George Perez, featuring the Thunder Agent's character Raven, who is the gentleman in the black outfit and the glider wings. Those of you watching along on YouTube can see it at the top of your screens right now. Yes, and his name was Raven, real name Craig Lawson. There we go. And it was only like 2 10-page stories, the equivalent of one full-sized standard monthly comic book. But it was George Perez art. It was something of a secret agent theme to it. It was something like the man from U.N.C.L.E. If he could fly and also wore a funny hat. And it was... It was just nice seeing George Perez do something in that genre. It wasn't dripping with superhero conventions and lots of costumes and detail and all of that, but it was a fun secret agent story, and it featured a femme fatale named Phoenicia, who went undercover at times as a belly dancer, and she was based pretty heavily on George's wife Carol, who also has been a belly dancer, sort of recreationally / vocationally. So it's nice to see George get a little bit of his personal life into that story, and just to work in a genre with which we don't normally associate him. And I was really impressed with what I saw, not only from Mr. Perez, but from the other creators who worked on that brief 5-issue run of Deluxe Comics' Thunder Agents. So I would strongly recommend, if you happen to unearth one in a cheap bin somewhere, it's definitely worth whatever you'll pay for it. Yep, exactly. Thank you, Ian. That is number 1 of that series.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, I'm. Did Deluxe do anything after this, or I mean, at least anything of note?
I don't think so. I think this was really the only project that was released under that publisher, because it folded that quickly.
Got it. Yeah, I'm reminded of the legal troubles that Valiant went through. Way after this happened in 1984, but when 2 separate publishers swore they had the rights to Valiant until agreements were finally reached, and the current Valiant that we know today was able to actually happen. So it's not the only time that's happened over the years, unfortunately. Well, good unearthing there, sir.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my number 5 is actually the final work that George Perez, the last final full work that George Perez put out in his illustrious career, and that was Sirens over at Boom Studios. And I think what I like the most about this is that it's still incredibly Perez. Like even though it's late in his career, and you would think that by then the work would have gone down in quality, but looking at the pages that came out of this, it's 100% what you would expect from a George Perez comic. It's kinetic. Every single character has a unique design and perspective. The dinosaur aliens that are running around are so 80s, it's fantastic. And the general premise of the comic is interesting, as this group known as the Sirens are essentially trying to save the galaxy, while the entire galaxy believes that they themselves are villains. And they're trying to clear their name while also kind of remember exactly who they are and who they're supposed to be. Kind of almost like the Eternals that way, when they're played a certain way, where sometimes they remember who they are, sometimes they don't, and then they wake up, or similar to JMS's Thor run when that first started out as well, where everybody thought that they were mere mortals, and then lo and behold, it turns out they were a lot more than that. And the story goes a bunch of different places from there, but really, I feel like he went on a high note. He really did. It's an interesting premise. And I would have loved to have seen more of this, but unfortunately it wasn't in the cards. And what we got is still absolutely gorgeous, Perez artwork and really unique storytelling. So that's my number 5, Sirens.
I think I can recall us doing an Off the Racks on issue number 1.
I think we did. Yeah, you're right, Murd.
Maybe, yeah.
I will have to track that down in ye old archive right now, so I can let
let the
folks
vintage
know
Levinstein
where that happened. Let's see if I search the word.
Back in the day.
Here we are, and it's right there. It is a Off the Racks from November 6th, 2014, episode 14, where you guys did Sirens number 1, Treehouse of Horrors number 20, and Dr. Mirage number 1. So check the archives for that for more information on Sirens. And with that, Shane.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if I was next or not. Good heavens. So the Avengers 30th anniversary poster. Now, this has gone back at least, because I was still in the previous house. This has gone back at least 15 years, maybe a little bit longer. Being with everybody talking comics all the time, got to really learn a lot about artists, writers, more than I ever paid attention to. I mean, I had read comics from teenage years on, but I followed characters, not necessarily writers and artists for the most part. But getting with Peter and Brian and Kevin, hanging out at the comic store all the time, I really started to learn a lot more than what I had ever done before. And George Perez, of course, was one of them, and really started to fall in love and pay attention to things he had done, doing searches for different things. And I came across this in an internet search. I thought, oh my God, that would be awesome to have. Yeah. And I started searching eBay for it, and I caught wind of it. One auction. I mean, I think I may have paid $10 or $20 for it. It's a little beat up around the edges, which is not a big deal. I put it in a plastic poster frame, and it's been hanging on my wall at the old house, at the new house. Mm-hmm. It is just absolutely seminal piece of work. One thing I have loved about any art that I see George Perez do is the more characters on it at times, the better it seems to be.
Yeah. I
don't think there's anybody that I have ever seen that can draw so many characters so well on one piece of work.
Oh, absolutely.
And to encompass pretty much the entire Marvel universe for the most part in one poster, with representation of X-Men, Avengers, Spider-Man, other characters, some that I didn't have any clue about at that time, but I just thought it was an amazing piece of work. And it pulled all the parts of the Marvel universe that I did know together in one picture. I couldn't resist trying to get it, want it, and again, it's been a mainstay in my comic room ever since. There are times I just stand there and stare at it and just marvel at what, no pun intended, but marvel at what's inside the poster. It is just gorgeous.
And Shane, what I've always loved about this poster in particular, and it's a tribute to Perez's just inimitable attention to detail. He has every version of the Wasp's costume.
I was just going to say that.
Around the border.
Which is no small feat, no pun intended there.
At that time, I really didn't know much about the Wasp at all, but it was just amazing to me what he did with that character all the way around like that. And I love the homage in the middle of the original Avengers, just in that, encompassed in that circle there.
Yep.
It's just gorgeous.
And the many Iron Men, right front and center as well. Getting War Machine in the action, and then Iron Man, and then is so many other versions of the costume, thrown in there along with the original at the top there. Did Perez ever have a Spider-Man run?
No,
I was trying to think of that.
I don't think
so.
Okay, because looking at the Spider-Man just really made me want one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it's 1993, so I love the 1993's Namor the Submariner with the early 90s long hair, for example.
It's a
great time capsule.
And some of them have the Avengers jackets on, or the West Coast Avengers jackets. I can't remember or see real clearly on the computer, but yeah.
And Reed Richards has that vest on that he had in the 90s. Yep.
I mean, you can't go wrong with something like this.
I'm just glad that because of the timing as well, that we get Thunderstrike on the cover and Smart Hulk, which were two of my favorite 90s additions to the Marvel lore.
Yeah.
And Darkhawk right there in the back.
Of course.
You have Moon Knight on there. Just all these phenomenal characters.
And the original Guardians of the Galaxy, for that matter.
Oh gosh, I didn't even see that. All these years.
Honorary Avengers, yes.
Oh, right.
Yep. Yeah, right there on the left-hand side. Yep. Good times. All right, Chris, let's throw it over to you.
So Marvel Fanfare, I looked at the issue numbers 10 through 13. When you find it in trade form, I believe it's entitled Web of Intrigue. We talked about it on our Black Widow Spotlight a couple of years back. I just picked it because it's one of the most just ravishing, stunning Black Widows ever put to page. There's an opening fight scene where she is just taking on a whole host of adversaries in her apartment, and then it kind of culminates with her standing in the doorway. I think she's dripping with water, holding one up by the scruff of his neck, and she just looks utterly unstoppable and just this pure force of martial fury. And it is one of the most captivating Black Widows ever put to page. He really, the costume, the hair, every aspect of it. It's very much channels the classic Bronze Age look of the character, but it's Perez doing it, so it's even better.
Yeah.
And like the cover Ian just put up, like the whole story looks that good. So, it's just a great Black Widow story. It's about her past and her interactions with the Shield. We talked about a lot in the spotlight, but if you love the Black Widow and if you love George Perez, this is, I think this is a fairly well-known work, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who love the Black Widow maybe are not familiar with this story. It's available in various trade publications. Marvel fanfares aren't that expensive as back issues either. I highly recommend this. It's Perez at the peak of his powers in terms of his Marvel work, and it's just an utterly beautiful rendition of the character.
Oh yeah, no question. I highly appreciate her hair. Like
he nails her hair. Like he really gets like I said, when we think of like the essence of the character, the way she's captured, like in the Bronze Age with Daredevil, he goes right to that in this version. It's beautiful. So
excellent.
Perez is just great at drawing hair in general.
Yeah.
He's the one who invented the coiffure of Starfire, which is one of the more
that's right. Well put, Murd.
Full-bodied hairstyles that the comics have ever seen.
Absolutely.
Not too many hairstyles leave a jet trail, but Perez found a way.
He found a way. All right, let's move on to our number 4s. And Shane, what is your number 4?
I keep changing my mind. I'm going to go with Legion of Three Worlds.
Okay, excellent. Chris.
JLA versus Avengers.
Well played. I am going to go with Hulk, Future Imperfect.
Ooh. Oh, I forgot about that one.
That would make your list. Ian.
Damn, that's one of my favorites.
Yep. And Murd.
I'm going to say, in the interest of Marvel representation, Fantastic Four number 176 and 177.
Ooh. Excellent. All right, Shane.
I really enjoy all the crossovers that DC does for the most part. When it came to Final Crisis, I was less enthusiastic about it. However, this side miniseries, 3 issues long, all with the Legion of Superheroes, who I really enjoy, but I've never had a long love with them. I come and go with Legion depending on what's going on. This book just looked absolutely gorgeous. Because I don't ever remember seeing George Perez draw the Legion of Superheroes like this ever. Like so many, a book dedicated. There might have been in something here or there, but
Crisis, for example.
Right. But this, it just rubbed me the right way when it came out, and I just fell in love head over heels with it.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely gorgeous book to read.
Yep. Yeah, this was on my potential top 5 list as well. And I was a huge fan of Wade's Legion. Like that was the one that I connected with the most. Abden and Lanning's Legion as well. Before that, I was pretty big into. And really, this let me get to know the other parts of the Legion that I was not nearly as familiar with. And it gave us a meeting of the worlds, quite literally, that I don't think a lot of fans of Legion ever thought we'd see. Like that a lot of these versions of the Legion had been forgotten or not touched upon in quite some time. Because they were treated as reboots. They were treated as like, well, the future's changed, so now here we go. Here's a new Legion, like the one before it. Bye bye. But Final Crisis had the nerve to say no, bye bye. They're still there, and we're going to bring them all together for the meeting of the ages, essentially.
And here again, something that I said before, I love that he can put together so many characters in one book and make it look spectacular.
Oh yeah.
And never will you ever get so many Legionnaires drawn by George Perez again.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Yep. Yeah. It was a bright spot of Final Crisis, certainly. I mean, I enjoyed Final Crisis. I forget if I've mentioned this on this show before, but it took me until the second read to actually really get Final Crisis for what it was. But this I got immediately. And it's because it's just old school DC comics at its best. And Perez and Jeff Johns did a terrific job on it.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times. Chris, over to you.
All right. So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage with this entry because due to its, shall we say, complex copyright situation, I haven't read it in many, many years because I can't find it anywhere. There's no trade of it, I think, available currently in print, as far as I know, unless you want to go spend probably a gazillion dollars on it online.
I was literally looking earlier today, and the cheapest you can find a quote-unquote new copy of even the trade and not the hardcover is like a solid $250 to $500.
Oh my god!
Really?
Okay, so there you go. But I remember. I mean, I had. Ian, what year did that come out again?
2003.
Yep.
Murd knew without.
Wow.
I just got electricity right, like every chakra is now open. Holy mackerel, that was amazing. All right, so I mean, I had my shop, so I remember getting it in. I remember how excited I was, how excited my customers were. I think they were prestige format, if I remember correctly. And I remember, just to go back to Shane's point, you had Perez, and was it Kurt Busiek the writer?
It was, yes.
Okay, so there you go. So I don't even need to remember that vividly. With that creative team, it was great. But what I do remember vividly, and to go back to Shane's earlier point, you have Perez rendering the entire Justice League and the Avengers interacting, fighting, etc., and various villains. I mean, it was like heaven came to the comic shop, and for a fan, when that book came out, was it 4 issues, I believe?
Yeah.
Yep. So it was such, like, when we talk about events, that was an event. Like that was something,
that was monumental.
Long time coming, and it did not disappoint in any way, shape, or form. It was immensely fun, but the artwork, and like Shane was saying, I don't think there's any. I was just so excited, I just spat on my computer. There's no other artist who can put that many characters and make each of them so distinct on a page. Like, there's a perfect example.
It's the cover to issue 1.
Yeah, and the hands of a lesser penciler, things get cluttered, things get lost. Never with this man.
Yep.
And look at that. Look at that.
He is a king of composition.
Yeah. So it was. I just remember just how much I looked forward to it every month, and I hope someday they can work it out so we can actually buy it.
I can't believe they're not. I can't believe they're not doing it now, right now, in the second.
Yeah,
that just baffles me.
There have been internet campaigns that have been screaming for it, and I'm all there for it because, frankly, now's the time to put aside your bullshit.
Absolutely.
Especially when, one of the most, important pieces of it is, only has so much time left, and this could go towards, so very important costs for him and for honestly, even Busiek deserves the cheddar too.
God, yes.
So yeah, I'm pissed that this is not in print. It's really annoying.
Yeah, I have the copies that originally came out. I have the absolute version, which is gorgeous.
Oh, I forgot they did that too.
And has that extra little volume that has all the original pages listed in it of JLA Avengers.
Speaking of which, a picture of what could have been.
Yeah.
A page from the never published 1980s version of JLA.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay.
That was mid-production until everything fell apart.
All right. Kang and the Lord of Time, I guess, would have been the heavies in that story if it had come to pass.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, last thing I'll say is, again, it was an event that lived up to the idea of an event.
Yeah.
And it was like, sometimes these things, they don't, the hype doesn't, the output doesn't meet the hype, but it you never really doubted with those creators involved, and sure enough, it delivered. And like I was saying before, like Shane, I don't even have any copies of the original miniseries. I'm sure I did it one time years ago, but I haven't read it in so many years. I really want to read it again.
I can't believe it's that expensive. I haven't even looked for it just because I have the absolute version. So I never searched for that.
I still have them. At least I think I still have them somewhere in my collection. And I'll be frank, I may actually bite the bullet at some point and just say screw it and pay the stupid amount of money to get the trade, because I had a chance to buy it when it was out and I didn't, and I still hit myself for that because it would have been worth it.
I'm holding on tight to my single issues,
Yep.
gentlemen. I was every bit as thrilled and excited by the release of each of those issues as you guys were.
Yeah.
And I agree, it was an event truly worthy of the name, and it was full display of Busiek's encyclopedic knowledge of the heroes of the lore of both universes. Though by his own admission, he knows Marvel a little better than DC, and also, of course, of Mr. Perez's celebrated talents to just throw huge numbers of characters onto the page and make it all just look like ballet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No,
well
and
put, Murd, well put.
Ian, you know what I'm going to ask you to do here? Can you find an image of number 3's cover?
I can, and I'm going to hold on to that for one of my picks because I knew somebody was going to go entire series. I'm going specific issue, and that will be my number 3. So we're gonna get there shortly. I couldn't help but have that still be on my list somewhere.
like you all have said, that really was an event, and it was lightning in a bottle that I don't think we'll see the likes of which again.
Oh, certainly, absolutely, yep. All right, well, before I opine further on that for my number 3, let's get to my number 4 here, and that is Future Imperfect.
I can't believe I forgot that one. Unbelievable.
There are very few comic books that define a character better than Future Imperfect. And that is what the Hulk did for at least specifically the Hulk of the 90s. As we got to see, the Hulk that we had, which was, Smart Hulk, which was in a ways, the perfect Hulk, one that was in control, being thrust into the future to find a Hulk that has been sent into madness and reigning over everyone. And it's kind of a case of, the worst thing you can possibly imagine coming true, and you trying to figure out what went wrong, what happened here, and looking at the incredible draftsmanship on this particular page here, just watching the force, the rubble that's being utilized here as well, is terrific. And then seeing things like this with the the throne, the room that of all the remains of the heroes that have been lost due to the Maestro.
See Hank McCoy's pelt stretched on the wall in the back there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. My favorite part is Rick Jones in the chair, in the Professor Xavier chair, the hover chair there. That was Rick Jones, right? I am remembering that right, because I know that this was his lair. Yeah, and seeing him in that very iconic '90s Professor Xavier chair was just an extra kick for me. But then Cap shield, U.S. Agent shield busted on the floor there. All these extra little hidden.
Is that on the right above Doc Ock's arms? Is that Stiltman's stuff?
I think you're right. I think it is.
Yeah,
I don't know that I ever noticed that before.
Yeah.
There's so much to see in this page. It's amazing.
I'm sure I have my mom's magnifying glass here in my little desk drawer. I'm sure that I used that and just towered over this for hours looking at stuff.
And my favorite is that there's a poster of Jean Grey Phoenix, just just there for the sake of it,
Dead again? Question mark.
Yep. And just overall, I just love this piece. It's not only an excellent Peter David story, but some of the prettiest George Perez art you can possibly get, and it's one of my favorite Hulk stories of all time. Period.
It is my favorite Hulk story. I am not the largest Hulk fan when it comes to just reading his stories.
Mm-hmm.
I could have cared less about Hulk at this time when it came out, but I saw this and I love not only alternate future stories, but when I opened this up and saw things like this, I was flabbergasted.
Oh my God, yeah. No, absolutely. And
Well, Shane, any fan of Star Trek is going to appreciate something like this.
Yeah.
yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah. Because this is essentially your mirror universe story,
Mhm.
The only thing they needed to do was, well, wait, no, they did. They even gave a beard, so clearly he's the evil one. That's the way that works. Yep. And the Maestro's been used many a time since. In fact, Peter David, recently went back to the character.
A whole new series of miniseries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep,
But-
the final installation of which begins next Wednesday, I might add.
Good point, Murd. But you really, I haven't gotten to those yet. I will get to them.
Me either.
But frankly, you don't even need them. You don't need them because this story, I'm sure that they're excellent stories. Don't get me wrong, but this story is just such a perfect standalone. But one of my favorite things that they did was eventually they packaged this along with Hulk the End, another one of my favorite.
That's a good one too. I did read that one.
Into one trade paperback. And they work off of each other
pretty well.
So it's that's still available in print if you want to track down that specific trade. They've reprinted that trade plenty of times, and it's called Hulk the End usually. But every now and then they change it to just be called Hulk Future Imperfect. But it's good stuff, baby. Good stuff.
Very good.
Yep. All right, number 4 goes to Murd.
Yes. This is a sampling of a smattering of Fantastic Four issues that George Perez did for Marvel in the mid to late 70s. You might even call it a run. Many of them were written by Roy Thomas, a few by Len Wein. I think maybe a couple by Marv Wolfman towards the end, but I'm focusing specifically on 176 and 177 because they're kind of a breath of fresh air. A chance for Perez to show his silly side a little bit because 176 and 177 were Impossible Man stories. This is hot on the heels of that classic story where Galactus showed up to try to consume Counter-Earth, which brought the Fantastic Four into space to visit the High Evolutionary on Counter-Earth. But then the Impossible Man showed up and said, "Hey, Galactus, why don't you come and eat my home planet instead? They'll be into it, don't worry." And so he did, and he ended up getting a case of cosmic indigestion as a result. But and Impy being at loose ends after that, he went home to Earth with just the original Earth with the Fantastic Four after that. And he just kind of hung out at the Baxter Building and ended up going over to the Marvel Comics offices for a while. And things got, silly and self-reflexive there because Impy got to interact directly with some of the bullpenners over there, including Stan Lee himself demanding his own comic book. And in the very next issue, we beheld the horror of Fantastic Four the Frightful Four holding cattle call auditions for a new fourth member. This is the issue that introduced the world to Texas Twister of the Rangers, and also Captain Ultra, who became kind of a recurring, not entirely serious comic relief superhero character in Marvel Universe stories for years to come. And this was George Perez drawing this. So often in his career, Perez has been asked to, or expected to, celebrate various superheroes and just kind of elevate them through his gorgeous artwork, and he's expected to tell these epic stories of Sturm und Drang and total seriousness. But this total seriousness is not what Perez was expected to do for these couple of issues. He got to let loose a little bit. Now, anybody who's met Mr. Perez, even
briefly in passing, knows that he's a man who likes to laugh. And so here we get to see a little bit of what he can do as an artist of comedy. His Impossible Man is a little, lankier or more angular than I personally like. But hey, he's a shapeshifter. He can look like anything Mr. Perez wants from panel to panel.
Yep. And looking at this page that Ian has selected, which is wonderful. Talk about a shot of the bullpen in the late 70s. So you got Kirby on the left because he had returned to Marvel in that period. I think that's Jerry Conway. Might be the late, great John Verputten there. Roy Thomas, of course. That's John Romita Sr. He always wore a tie at the office. I think it's Archie Goodwin. I don't know who's on the end there in the beard, unfortunately. Could be maybe Marv Wolfman, not sure. But that's a great panel.
And Stan right there front and center.
Yeah, when we did an FF in the Bronze Age several years ago. We talked about these issues actually quite a bit because they're so much fun. Great pick, Murd.
And here's a shot of some of the previously mentioned, a little bit closer up and in better quality. Loving rendering of Jack there.
Yep.
Smoking the stogie, of course.
I like that Human Torch was lighting it in the other panel.
Yep. One thing of note on the Impossible Man Frightful Four image that I brought up for 177, Murd, Perez does one of my favorite things to Johnny when you see the flames, but he's not actually flamed on, and that's something that not every artist renders. You know?
Good point.
And I love that he did that. That's one of my favorite looks of Johnny Storm, where he's not quite flamed on, but he's still got the flames coming out of the suit.
Yep, his temperature is rising.
Exactly. Yep. All right, let's move on to our third picks, and I'm just going to say mine since I was saving it for number 3 specifically, and I have already mentioned it. JLA Avengers number 3. And Chris, what is your number 3?
Just speaking broadly here, his Avengers work from the late 1970s.
Well done. Murd.
My number 3 was going to be JLA Avengers, the whole miniseries, but as that's been covered, I think I'm going to pop in his issues of Justice League from the early 80s.
Terrific. Shane?
I'm going to say his Avengers work with Busiek when they rebooted the Avengers.
Terrific. Okay, so JLA Avengers number 3 in particular. Here is that image that Murd asked for.
Oh,
and
God.
Man,
God.
oh man, there is no one who is a better master of the spread than George Perez. Putting on as many different versions, as many different JOA and Avengers characters that existed that it could fit onto a 2-page cover.
Yes, as complimentary as we have been about Shane's 30th anniversary poster, and deservedly so, but just imagine Perez taking everything he did with that poster, putting all of that, plus 10 extra years worth of Avengers characters into this image, and then adding in 50 years worth of Justice League characters.
Oh, Yep. Absolutely.
Did they ever make this into a poster?
I think they might have. I'm not 100% on that, but I've certainly seen, and it's possible George may have been selling this as a print at conventions.
Oh, that could be.
Because I've definitely seen this in at least print form before. Certainly hanging at shops, I've seen it occasionally.
Now, question: Perez has had troubles with his eyes later in his life, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Understandably, when you look at work like this, my God,
because the attention to detail is stunning. I can only imagine how many hours this took to produce.
I can't even imagine how to plot this out.
Oh my God, yeah, and to have every era represented too, and that they have this specific Kyle Rayner costume, which was at the time which is actually still kind of one of my favorites. I like the original, but of his other costumes, this is the one that I go to the most, even if it is a Jim Lee production, and he's not always great with costume designs. This one was worked pretty well for me when it was drawn right, and Perez certainly knew how to draw that one right.
If I recall correctly, he had to go back and redo a lot of the images he had drawn of Kyle in this miniseries, because that costume had been pretty recently introduced when Perez was working on this.
That's good to know, actually.
Was that a Green Lantern costume, or was it Ion? Or am I thinking wrong?
That was the Green Lantern costume that came after Ion. Like immediately after the Judd Winnick arc where he became Ion, that's when Jim Lee redesigned the costume, and this is what he was wearing for the foreseeable future after that. Now, what's great about this issue, other than the cover, is the fact that this is where we get and I'm a huge fan of amalgam style stories, we get the reality where the Avengers and the JLA existed in the same way that Earth 1 and Earth 2 existed, that they had those, crossover adventures, that they had their luau's and their Thanksgiving meals where they would get together, and I loved that they did this in this series. It just worked so well, and it created this joint reality, this joint existence that I'd been clamoring for between the JLA and the Avengers, after years of reading comics. And we also got, looks into what would happen if the worlds were unjoined. Some of the calamities that could occur to these characters. They see all these negative moments in their life, like Arthur Curry losing his hand, Scarlet Witch dealing with all of her
Master Pandemonium.
Every bit of weird shit that Division and Scarlet Witch dealt with is right there on a page. The Flash, watching himself die in Crisis, and the death of Jason Todd, and all these things eventually being reversed, and also Hulk, Thor and Wonder Woman, seeing some of the tragedies that they've occurred in their lifetime, and really just it goes down to if you could live a joint life that's better than the existences you had before, but there's a possibility that maybe some things may not have existed, or loved ones that you had known may not be loved ones. Like, would you do it? Would you revert things back? And the JLA and the Avengers had to make a very important decision here. Not only the fact that the worlds probably would have, gotten destroyed by being merged too long, but what can you do? They made the right choice, which is no, we have to set things right the way they once were, because it's in their morals to do so. And it's just such a wonderful issue, beautifully crafted all the way around. And that's why I had to put it on my list somewhere. The series itself is terrific, but this particular issue is what made this series sing. That's my number 3. Masterfully done. Crisis level stuff here. Crisis level. Not that we'll mention that at any point. Anyway, let's go ahead and move forward. Murd, I believe you were next.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little while ago when we did that micro spotlight episode. That I believe it was a Chris's suggestion of
the Justice League stories. Yep.
Right. It's the Justice League number 184 through 186, which is Perez drawing a Justice League, Justice Society team up that also took them to the worlds of New Genesis and Apocalypse. Mm-hmm. And that was Perez's first work with the Justice League, and I was surprised at that time to learn just how few issues of Justice League Volume 1 Perez actually penciled. It was kind of a handful. It was that little 3-issue arc, numbers 192 through 197, and part of the big jam session anniversary issue that was number 200. But I do have, I don't think all, but most of those issues that Perez penciled of Justice League. Number 192 and 93 was the new origin of the Red Tornado, in which, courtesy of Perez and writer Jerry Conway, we learned that the Red Tornado had always been more than just an android. He was, in fact, possessed by the alien elemental wind being known as the Tornado Champion / Tyrant from the planet Ran, which is kind of a brilliant retcon, I've always thought. And hot on the heels of that, I think there's like a one-shot in there of the Justice League versus Amos Fortune, and some tarot card beings that he brought. But after that, there was a 3-part, another JLA JSA tale featuring the Ultra-Humanite and his incarnation of the secret society of supervillains, featuring villains of 2 worlds. Like the Earth 1 Cheetah, the Signal Man, one of my favorite lesser tier Batman villains, and also from Earth 2 people like Monocle and the Ragdoll. And it's just well, Perez having fun with these characters. It's probably the first time that he'd had a chance to throw all these DC characters from different sides of the multiversal vibrational barrier together, just to have fun seeing what resulted. So it's kind of an early prelude to the Crisis story that George would end up penciling several years down the line. So yeah, it's one of my favorite of the many different JLA JSA team ups. That one that we saw in issues number 195, 196, and 197 of JL of A Volume 1.
Yep, and I found the
Ooh,
clean
rough
pencils to issue 92, and damn, that's all I have to say to that. Damn. Nobody
amazing.
Nobody has draftsmanship the way Perez has draftsmanship. Terrific. Chris, over to you.
So my first, as far as I can remember, my first experience with George Perez art were these Avengers stories he penciled. I want to say mid to late 70s. He did a slew of them, not all in order, but when I was buying back issues a lot as a kid, when my parents would take us down to Florida, where my family has a condominium, and there was an old used bookstore there. I've mentioned other shows called Jolie's. This is in Stuart, Florida, long gone now, but they had a very impressive array of back issues, just pell-mell in long boxes in the front of the used bookstore, and very low 1980s prices. And I just bought, I would get my hands on. My parents were very generous, and I got a ton of Avengers, and a lot of them I realized later were George Perez stories. And I remember, for example, issue 144's introduction of Hellcat, and he penciled that issue. The Korvac saga, he penciled some of those stories as well, which of course is a classic in the Avengers lore. And of course, Korvac's being used brilliantly now by Cantwell in the current already magnificent Iron Man series, the latest Iron Man series. But I remember as a younger person, I didn't know who he was yet, but I was really taken with the artwork in that period of the Avengers. And what I remember most vividly, and we've talked about it before in this program, is the very controversial Avengers 200, with the really weird and creepy, shall we say, exiting of Carol Danvers stage left into the creepy arms of, was it Marcus? Right?
Yes. Son of Kang, and also son of Carol herself.
Yeah, that was that. I mean, as an old, we talked about this in our Avengers Spot years ago, how bizarre that story is, and how clearly, like, somebody was asleep at the wheel with that whole thing. Because I mean, I don't want to spoil it. People haven't read it, but if you read it, especially when you read it with today's sensibilities, it is shocking, actually. But the artwork in it is phenomenal, and I remember that. And I remember Jamie D always loved the anniversary issues with like glue bound covers and more pages. And Avengers 200 is an issue like that. And if you look at the cover, it's I think he put all the Avengers on there, if I remember correctly. I haven't looked at it. There you go. Well, the Avengers of that time who were part of the team.
And you could win a Toys R Us shopping spree.
Heck yeah.
Yes, that's right. So this is 1980. Okay, so yes, these are his work on the book, like late 70s into this period. So. And it's my first experience with him. I mean, I'm not going to list every issue because I haven't read a lot of them in years, so I couldn't take them all from memory anyway. But as a kid, I remember being floored by this artwork because I'd never seen his work before. I noticed it's also inked by the great Terry Austin there too, I believe. But it stuck in my memory. And then as I got older and I experienced more of his artwork, both for both Marvel and DC, I made the connection, realized, oh, this is the artist I loved as a kid when I got these sort of random Avengers stories from like the latter Bronze Age period. And I mean, for Perez, this is a pretty tame cover. You only have the current team, not every Avenger that's ever served in the ranks, but it's still such a captivating cover. Yeah. And I love the, that sort of late bronze Marvel, like the image on the side of all the characters. So if you're looking at the rack, you know who's in the book. That's one of the great innovations of Marvel. And it's beautiful Perez artwork. His whole run in that period, I mean, Black Knight, various villains they fought. I have mentioned Hellcat. It's my first experience with his work, and it always stayed with me.
You know, one of the things that draws me to this artwork, and I'd love to know if this is Austin or Perez that decided this, but you can see Tony's eyes through the faceplate, and you don't often get that with previous versions of Tony Stark, and it lends further to the fact that it's a man in a suit as opposed to a robot, and I appreciate that. I think that's an excellent attention to detail there.
It would be typical of Perez's work, so I say we give him credit for that.
And credit has been given.
All right.
and now for him getting to draw every single possible Avenger, over to Shane.
So this run in particular, up to this point, I had not really read much of any Avengers comic in my comics reading career. And when this came out and found out that this creative team was on it, I couldn't resist, and I was not disappointed. It was an absolutely fantastic run, gorgeous art. It was just fun from start to finish, and I was so glad that they did it and that I read it right as it was coming out. For me, it was a seminal Avengers work, because again, I had not read anything previously like this from Marvel with the Avengers. Just fantastic. Yeah. And again, you can't go wrong with a cover like that. My gosh.
Yeah. And the interiors were nothing to sneeze at either. I'll tell you that.
No.
This is actually, Shane, this is my number one choice.
Oh, wow.
But I'm going to talk about something very specific within the overall run. So I'll save that. But I think this is one of the greatest periods in the entire history of the title.
Yeah. Sure.
Period.
Oh, yeah.
I'll talk about that more later, but a great choice.
It was such a return to classic form after many years of of less fondly remembered Avengers stories. This was something the fans were just starved for. And Shane, you got a fantastic introduction to the Avengers as a team concept.
Yeah.
And
just consider fantastic.
In that first arc of that series, I mean, you got Perez drawing not only every Avenger that had been to that point, you also had him redesigning all of them.
In Arthurian times,
Right, an Arthurian sword and sorcery alternate reality brought about by Morgan Le Fay.
And here again, alternate reality. God, I loved it. Such a great run.
That was originally going to be my number 2, and I'll just talk about that now a little bit. That specific issue, Avengers number 2, spoke to me for exactly what we're talking about, that, the alternate reality take on it and everything, and getting to see these Avengers in an entirely new light. I believe it eventually wound up being its own designated Earth. And it may have been, brought back a little bit after that, but specifically the design for Captain America always sticks.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeoman America.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And what he did to Iron Man's armor to make it look, period piece. And even though Thor didn't really have many changes, I love the beard and the and what he did with his hair there, with the with the longer look for it, and some of these other additions here. Black Panther looking strikingly different. The tunic on Namor, and the pixie look for Wasp.
Yeah,
oh, man, like everything about this just, it was what ify, it was alternate reality, and it was completely what I was looking for at that point in my comic book reading lifetime. It was great. Yep. And it was also essentially my introduction to the Avengers as well, because I don't count Heroes Were Born, and
nor should you.
Exactly. I'd read like a smattering of issues.
No, I didn't read that at all. No.
I read it all.
I tried.
I literally read it all.
You were so young, Ian. You're so young.
Yeah.
I did Iron Man and I did Fantastic Four. I did enjoy both of those, but I didn't read the other two.
There were two moments in that Avengers run of Heroes Were Born that I actually really liked. When our Thor came back, and they found him, like in between the universes or whatever, and he was clearly the Thor from our reality, meaning that Franklin Richards' brain had created another Thor, and they were essentially, brothers after that. that was an interesting take. And then the issue 13s that everybody forgets that James Robinson wrote, which was a Wildstorm crossover, was actually
yes.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And didn't Gen
Right.
13, like the actual Wildstorm characters, show up as a part of that?
You're
God,
Yeah.
I forgot about
Yeah, they
Gen
did.
13. Holy
I
mackerel.
love Gen 13. Oh
Yeah,
my
Forgot
god.
about them.
Hawkeye
That
was
was a fun
member.
book.
Hawkeye was a member of Stormwatch. I remember that particularly. that was one of the main things, and also Captain America had become Nomad in that reality because he had like removed himself from the fray, and I think in his place the android from Wildcats wound up becoming Captain America for a while. It was a trip.
Yeah.
But more importantly, this Avengers run happened after that, and issue 2 was awesome, and yeah, it was good times.
Yep.
All right, let's go to our number 2 picks here, and Murd, will throw it back to you for our number 2 choice 1.
Okay. History of the DC Universe,
Ooh.
numbers 1 and 2.
Fantastic. Chris.
The Judas Contract.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's a good one.
My number actually, you know what, Shane, go ahead.
Shane's
I'm
in
gonna
agony.
go with yeah. I keep scribbling on these little pieces of paper. It's ridiculous. I'm going to go with George Perez and Mark Waid's Brave and the Bold Run.
Oh, that's a good
Ah.
one. That's a really good one. Yep.
Well, you know what?
Excellent.
We're gonna joint talk about that because that was my number 2. So, yep. So
You should have went first. I'd have picked something else.
I know, but still, either way,
Yeah, more the merrier.
exactly, more the merrier, and it's well worth discussing because I actually have an interesting history with that as well. So, Murd, let's head over to your number 2. Go right ahead.
Okay. Well, History of the DCU was a companion text to the magnum opus that was Crisis on Infinite Earths. It came out on the heels of Crisis, and it was intended to kind of explore and chart this new unified single universe, single timeline publishing continuum that DC had set up for themselves through the apocalyptic story that Crisis was. And of course, our guides to this were the same creative team that had brought us the aforementioned Crisis series, Marv Wolfman as writer and George Perez as artist. But it had a very different tone and a very different look from the Crisis series that preceded it. And it was kind of a guide. It was the kind of the voiceover narration of Harbinger. She was the narrator for the whole thing, the character Harbinger, of this new single timeline, supposedly solid and inviolable, like the sacred timeline as seen in the recent Disney Plus Loki series. That was kind of the attitude of DC editorial. And this is it. There's not going to be any branching off from it. No alternate realities, no parallel Earths or alternate futures. It's just from the dawn of time to the end of time, this is more or less what we're working with here, and it's all going to be laid out in this 2-issue miniseries. There was 2 extra-sized prestige format issues, the first one covering all of superhuman history from the dawn of time up to World War II, and the second one covering just like the 40 years after that, when all the superhero stuff started to happen. And Ian has just put up for YouTube viewers a sample page from, I'm pretty sure, issue number 2, since we've got the Doom Patrol on there, Black Lightning, some Bronze Age DC innovations.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just blocks of text as provided by Wolfman / Harbinger, and with still illustrations, basically, by Perez. I mean, when I say still illustrations, they've still got all the dynamism one comes to expect out of Perez artwork, but it's a different kind of graphic style for Perez in that it's not sequential art. It's just single images that are iconic, but that they're not. They're telling a story, a self-contained story per panel, as opposed to just something flowing from image to image to tell a continuous narrative. It's almost like pinups, but with a chronological thread uniting them. So it's different. It's a different kind of storytelling than we're accustomed to seeing from Perez, and he did it up very beautifully. And he just brought his usual attention to detail to every single one of them. Some of them were small and intimate. Some of them were huge and varied, and he got to do a lot of different things with imagery in this in the span of these 2 issues. And of course we got some splash pages with lots and lots of characters thrown in there as always.
Wow.
Perez's want. Here we see a 2-page splash having to do with Kirby's Fourth World. So with the forces of New Genesis and Apocalypse, Highfather and Darkseid, Calabac and Orion, and many, many others just beating the ever-loving divine stuffing out of each other. Yep. So it delved into every little nook and cranny of the DC universe, past, present, and future, or at least all the ones that remained in canon once Crisis got done with them. And Perez and Wolfman had every bit as much fun dealing with them here as they did. And if anything, I think this was probably a little more relaxed for them, because they weren't on quite as unforgiving a monthly deadline to produce the art for this. And also, they didn't need to cram multiple characters into, they were able to, Perez was able to think a little bit more about each image.
Yeah.
Put it to paper and then just kind of piece it out, more at his leisure.
Yeah. No, definitely. When I look at this series, especially the text pieces, I hear movie trailer voice. And
not Don LaFontaine, surely.
No. Just very much like the type of voice you would expect, and not the Don LaFontaine one, but just in general, like this is what we're going to be getting, as things move forward here. This character is going to be doing this, and that character is going to be doing that, and I think at the time it's exactly what DC needed in order to cement the world, and also I wonder, if we'd get a comic like that today. It feels like something that's very much of its era, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think that it's storytelling has changed a little bit since that time. And I don't know if you'd be able to pull off the exact same thing today that you did back then.
Not the exact same thing, but the style has been employed with certain variations by other creators just recently.
Yeah.
Remember, John Ridley did his other history of the DC universe, which is a deliberate homage to this miniseries, just intended to pay tribute to characters who added diversity to the DC universe. And Mark Waid and I'm trying to remember the name of the artist with whom he worked, Javier Rodriguez, maybe. The name is not coming to me, but they did their the history of the Marvel universe.
Yes, they did.
Which was a very different style from Perez's, but still some gorgeous artwork to accomplish roughly the same end.
Certainly. Yep. Good stuff.
Adam, I will say that probably will still remain my number 1 pick. I have the hardback version of it.
Ooh.
And it still has the poster in it, which is the every creator drawing their their best character, I guess, in it. One of my absolute favorite images, and everybody could pick this out of a hat without ease, is that JLI image. What I loved about this book is absolutely everything Adam said. The only thing I could add more is, for me, this was George Perez getting to draw every single DC character, not in just a pose on a cover, not just in a panel in a book. It was an interesting way that he, like Adam said, was not his normal style, something that he could play around with, think a little bit more, give something a little bit more dynamic while still delivering this incredible punch of characters on a page, and getting to draw everything from the beginning of DC Universe to everything that happened up to that point in the future. It's just an absolute seminal piece of DC work for him.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, let's head over to you.
So we've talked, I think we did Judas Contract as a book of the month, now that I think about it.
I think we did, yeah.
Some years back. So definitely referred, I'm sure Ian's already checking the number because that's part of his excellence. But this might have been the first Perez DC work I ever read. Growing up, I liked the DC characters. I didn't read as many DC comics as I did Marvel until I was probably into my late teens and 20s, and I started reading a lot of both. But So I was hearing about this story, and that it was such an important moment in both the history of the Teen Titans and really of DC Comics in general. And however many years ago, whatever it was, I grabbed one of that's been in trade in so many different editions, but I grabbed one of them. And I mean, I remembered Perez from that Avengers work I mentioned in my previous selection, but this artwork floored me even more. The attention to detail in it was breathtaking. And what really struck me about it was, and this is what it was always really struck with Perez's work in general. So there's something so stunningly beautiful about it, but at the same time, he captures moments that are also very disturbing. I'm thinking about the fact that Slade is having this enormously creepy relationship with Terra. And the scene where like he's like in the bathrobe and she's like coming out, like they clearly have just slept together.
Yeah.
Shane knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's Perez work, so it's beautiful, but at the same time, he's not diminishing the fact that this is really wrong and really creepy. And he doesn't pull any punches on alluding to what has happened. And like, and I remember he gave her like a look almost of like madness, basically, in that scene a minute. And of course, many other parts of the story, that's the main premise of the whole story is what's going on in her head. But I was just floored by the way he could capture emotion in that. Like when Beast Boy realizes her betrayal, and how utterly crushed he is.
Yeah.
And the way he captures the look of his just sheer devastation in his face. Like he's almost like I think he's kind of like reaching out to her, and it's so well done. And as much as we're celebrating Perez's ability to just fill a page with masterful composition and the distinction of all the different characters, when he goes for the gut punch emotion, he's just as much a master of that as well. And that's such an emotional story, because it's about, you know, young people, and you know, obviously when you're young, so emotions are often heightened to extreme to begin with, and then you have this betrayal, and he so captures just in their faces, like when Deathstroke is like taking all of them out early on in the story, like there it is, like she's even got the cigarette holder. Actually, she doesn't, but you know, she's got the cigarette, and you know, she's a kid.
Yeah.
And look at her face. Like, look how, like the makeup. I mean, it's so troubling. I mean, his attention to detail is still there, and it's so masterful. But it doesn't distract from the fact that this is this situation is really wrong, and this person has real issues. And like I said, when Deathstroke is taking all of them out in the beginning of the story, and like the expressions on their face, the shock, and just it's for me, this is one of the greatest like stories in DC history. And look at that. Like you even got like the Eisner-esque title where they kind of bring it into the story.
Yep.
Shane was talking before about how well he can draw like rubble. Like look at Terra emerging from below and all the debris around her. Like it's so clean and beautiful, but it's not clean to the point where it's sanitized.
Yeah.
And I think that's for me, that's what makes his artwork so amazing. Nothing is missed or shortchanged. Masterpiece.
Absolutely. And nobody is more kinetic.
Well put.
With the artwork than Perez, and it perfectly on its way here. And
this is a story that's been, I mean, they did it in the Teen Titans cartoon, which I thought they did pretty well, actually.
Yeah, very well done.
Not the fun,
not the Teen Titans Go. It was the
previous one.
Yep.
Yeah.
They also did it animated. They also did an animated movie, which
I haven't seen that actually.
Yeah.
When did that come out?
That was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure I can find that on HBO, but
you can. Yeah. It was actually initially going to be part of the initial slate of animated movies, like right when they were doing like Superman Doomsday and all that.
Right.
It was supposed to be then, and then it got canned because they didn't know how well it was going to sell, and then they revisited it a couple of years ago, and I think they did a pretty good job of it.
I'll have to watch it.
It's modernized certainly, but
Yeah.
but I think they did a good job overall.
The thing I like about the Teen Titans cartoon version is they do redeem Terra, and it's not nearly
Yeah.
as creepy throughout it, but it's still a well crafted story.
And Beast Boy is just as crushed in the cartoon
Yeah,
as he is
yeah.
in the comic,
Sure.
because he has feelings for her. So,
Oh yeah. And she does him a little bit too. I mean,
yeah.
the way the cartoon portrays it, that she really did have something for him, just wasn't smart about it.
Yep. All right. So Shane, we'll go with yours, and I am picking as an alternate.
No, you were going first, because I'll talk very briefly about it. I it's so easy for me to just say the same thing. It's for Brave and the Bold, it was the rekindling of a fantastic book with two fantastic creators.
Yep.
And it blew me away, and it was worth absolutely every penny and all the hype that surrounded it for as long as they were on it, which was only the first 2 volumes of it, the first 8 issues, something like that, 12 issues.
It was a 10-issue run.
10-issue
run from issues 1 through 10, and then after that, Wade stuck with it for a couple more issues with Scott Collins art and I think some Jerry Ordway stuff. And then eventually he transitioned out. I think Dan Jurgens wrote a bunch of it after that.
Yeah, yep. It was just fantastic. So you go ahead and pontificate more about it.
All right, sounds like a plan. This is actually somewhere in my collection, and I know it's in safekeeping, but I have an autographed copy of Brave and the Bold issue 1 by George and Bob. Bob Wyachek and George Perez both signed it for me at New York Comic Con one year.
Yes.
I think this was the year where Podcast Arena or Podcast Alley was still a thing. It was Arena. Alley was that old site. Podcast Arena was still a thing, and we were upstairs that one year at New York Comic Con. And I remember walking around into the artist alley, and Wyachek was there, and Perez was there as well, and they were both incredibly gracious and signed my copy. And this was my first real exposure to this style of DC team up, because again, my DC history is way less than my Marvel history. I'd seen teams team up before this, like I'd seen a couple of JSA and JLA crossovers and what have you, but just a straight up team up book like this hadn't really been in the cards for a while, outside of, I guess you'd say, Superman Batman by Jeff Loeb.
Mm-hmm.
And this showed me just how deep the relationships were within the DC universe, while also at times surprising me with people who had never really teamed up that much before. And this first issue was a little bit of both, because this was right after, Hal came back. Like, it wasn't that long afterwards.
Yeah.
And you could see that Batman was still holding a little bit of a grudge from the Hal that came before. Like, he wasn't sure if this was a person that he could trust. And that was there on the page, bar none. And Wade didn't pull back any punches on that one, while at the same time, Perez drew a classic Hal Jordan, and anytime he gets to draw Batman, I am thrilled beyond belief. And we got that there in the first issue, and then there were just some really fun ones, like issue 10. The last one that he got to draw was a double team up.
That's right.
between Superman and the Silent Knight, and then also an old school Teen Titans and Aquaman and Aqualad team up, which again, wasn't expecting to find fun like this, and boy oh boy did I get it. And Perez, didn't matter who he was drawing, he was going to draw them like the most classic version of a character that you could possibly throw out there. And that's what a book like Brave and the Bold needed at this point in time in DC Comics lore. And they brought a title back that had been gone for a while, and they did a damn good job of bringing it back. Love those issues, and I cherish them for that, for really letting me see a side of the DC universe that I hadn't really seen before. And I'll never forget that. Yep.
Fantastically fun book.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. 100% the case. And I remember even hearing in an interview or two that Perez just really appreciated just getting to do this style of fun in a DC universe for the first time in a while. Like he'd done like the epic scoping series and hadn't really had a chance to just, do like one-off stories in a while. And this was a good way to stretch those muscles for him. Good times. Well, folks, I believe we are at our numero unos. And Chris, you're number one.
It is the Avengers Busick Perez run, but I'm going to speak about a specific arc within it.
Certainly. Shane.
I'm going to stick with saying that history is my run, but I'll talk about the Alex Ross and George Perez Crisis poster.
Very good. I'm going with a specific Crisis on an Infinite Earths issue, and that, of course, is the seminal issue 7. And Murd.
And I, to the surprise of none, I'm simply going to say Crisis.
What? A Crisis tapes. Chris, go ahead.
So to echo our earlier comments, I mean, the Busick Perez run on Avengers, I think, is the greatest, one of, if not the greatest period in the whole title's history. It goes to the essence of what makes the Avengers great. It has the classic feel of all those wonderful stories that people love from the Bronze Age and the 80s and Silver Age as well. The dynamic of all the relationships, everything is there because Busick just knows those characters so well. It makes them great. And of course, it's Perez, as Ian already showed us, drawing all of the Avengers as only he can. What I'm going to focus on, though, is probably the most terrifying Avengers story of all time, which is Ultron Unlimited.
I knew you were going there, my friend. I was already pulling up the images.
Yeah, thank you. You know me well, brother. And it's Busick and Perez with their combined talents really showing. I mean, they're one of the classic Avengers adversaries, Ultron, but they're taking Ultron to the extreme of that concept.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's Ultron committing genocide.
Yeah.
Or just he wipes out an entire nation, essentially. I made up Marvel Nation. I forgot which one it was, but Murd will probably remember.
I think it was called
Slorenia?
I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I just remember there's a page we just show the bodies just strewn everywhere. And it's Perez. So it just makes his art so amazing is that he can draw scenes that are so life affirming and wonderful and dynamic. And then he draws this. And it's just as powerful, just as evocative. And it's not like glossed over a cartoon. Like I said before, he doesn't sanitize anything. That's how good his artwork is. Like it can adapt to any kind of emotional environment and bring home the bacon, so to speak. And I remember in that story, just Avengers can't stop Ultron. And he's basically just, I mean, by the way, in case anybody's wondering where Avengers 2 came from, this, it's basically this story essentially.
You bet.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yep.
And the desperation of this story, like you really get the sense of that the Avengers may not even be able to stop Ultron. And even if they can, I mean, he's just killed so many people that it's just a Pyrrhic victory, right? It doesn't, I think it's one of the greatest Avengers stories of all time. I think it goes to the heart of why the Marvel Universe needs an Avengers team to face these types of threats. Like, remember, what's the whole point of the Avengers at the beginning? Like, they're going to band together to face threats no one hero can handle alone. And boy, is this the Mac Daddy of that, essentially. Because I think of all the Avengers stories I've loved over the years, rarely do any have the stakes of this one, because there's so much death and destruction in it. Plus, it's Busick writing the Priest version of Black Panther, which is also awesome, because it's from that time period. So anyone who loves the Avengers and hasn't read this story, or if you like the Avengers movie, Avengers 2, and like, you need to read this. And look, it's who else but Perez could draw that many Ultrons?
Yes.
Yeah.
And make each one basically distinct in what they're doing for the most part.
Yep.
But it's a classic team. It's the Trinity. So it's Iron Man, Cap, and Thor, and then you have the Panther, Firestar, Murd. Who was her buddy?
Justice. Yeah, Vance Astrovic.
Yeah. So I forgot who else was president in that team, that battle.
Well, Thor is there, Iron Man's there, Captain America, and then, as you said, Firestar and Justice and Black Panther.
Okay.
Yep.
So, because I remember Firestar and Justice were like new Avengers.
Yes.
And I remember that they also really, Busek and Perez really played up the fact that as new Avengers, like, they were really like just blown away by what they had to deal with in this particular arc.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ultron, the enormity of dealing with this type of Ultron was just horrifying on every level. This story has been reprinted on its own individual trades as well, because it's that important. And it just shows that Perez can do everything. He can do stuff that is truly, like, he can do the cosmic stuff, he can do the intimate things that we've talked about, and then he can do these things that are just so awe-inspiring and horrifying in scale. And again, with no sanitization of all, but yet the artwork is still that stunning.
Yeah.
That's as good as it gets for me.
This was easily the first time I found Ultron menacing, because I'd seen him a couple of times in the comics before, getting to this point.
Well, he starts off as a roving garbage can in his first appearance, as Murd, I'm sure, will recall. But as he adapts, Hank Pym again, just messing everything up.
Uh-huh.
And we end up ultimately with this version, because Ultron keeps adapting and changing. It's because Busek and Perez just figure, okay, what is Ultron to the extreme, or Ultron Unlimited? What would that be like?
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Absolutely. So. Yep. Good stuff. All right, Shane.
So definitely history of the DC universe for me. I easily could have picked Crisis, but there was not a chance in hell that I would do that to Adam for the whole series, because he will talk about it way, way better than I ever could.
Oh yeah.
But I will talk about the poster that George Perez and Alex Ross collaborated on. When it came out, I thought it would be cool. And then Carlene had a birthday party for me with some comic friends, and Alex, John, and Peter. Some of you know Alex and John, some of you don't. Peter, certainly you all know. They chipped in together and got it for me for a birthday present. And for years, I had that hanging on my comic book wall at the old house. Just an absolute amazing, above everything else we've ever talked about as far as group shots, group gatherings, and pictures that George Perez has done. This, to me, is hands down the most, what do you want to say? The most daring, the biggest challenge that I could have ever imagined. I never ever thought it would come out looking as good as it did. It's just a spectacular piece of artwork, and I am trying to figure out where to put it in this house, and I can't do it easily without destroying it. And I don't want to do that. But it's a phenomenal piece of artwork. If there, I'm sure there may be people that have never seen it, or certainly never seen it up close. I've heard the poster is not the easiest thing to find anymore. And if you do find it, it's not the cheapest thing in the world. But it's a fantastic piece.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm trying to find the piece in question here, and I think I did, so I'm going to bring it up on the screen here.
500 plus characters.
Yeah.
Some of them just headshots, some of them full-bodied. Some of them positioned in tableau to represent different scenes from the story.
It is every character that appeared in Crisis, right, Adam?
Yes. I don't think with any exception.
Wow. So I found a History of the DC Universe poster from 1987, but this Crisis one that you're talking about, yeah, I can't happen to find it at the moment. I'll see if I can continue to take a look for it. But either way, yes, you're right. It did. I think what's best about that particular image is just how, as is the case with every other image that George draws, is that not one thing is repeated.
No.
No,
and it still tells the story.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like even characters that could easily be, just like also rans, they all have their own distinct styles and personalities, and yeah, it's wonderful. It really is.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, good times. So I'm gonna just talk about this one a little bit, and then I'll let our crisisologist go further into it. But I specifically chose Crisis 7 because in all my years of reading comic books, no particular cover and no particular interiors have stuck out to me more. And it's one that's been repeated. It's one that's been copied time and again. Oh yes. As Peter Rios knows very well, as he hunts down every single iteration of it. But yeah, it's that crying Superman on the cover that just cannot be replicated, no matter how many times it's been duplicated or homaged. Just such emotion and passion brought upon in an issue there, and to know what's happening up front is also incredibly daring, because essentially they're telling you, like, yeah, this happened in this issue, read about it, rather than what could have easily been a shadowed image and open these pages to find out more. It's like, no, this happened and we're going to deal with it. And it's a seminal work. It is probably my favorite George Perez image, period. And that he fits so many of those of the other characters in DC history in the background there in shadow, while this is so front and center on the cover itself is just breathtaking. And then the internals, the interiors themselves are just as pretty.
The way he has the onlookers distributed on the cover vertically, like on tiers or mezzanines of like a stage or a theater. It's like they're a massive supernumerary chorus for an opera, bearing witness to this spectacle of tragedy unfolding there. I mean, there have been prior to this, there have been many covers to superhero comics showing images of tragedy like this, but usually they dreams, hoaxes, imaginary stories, what have you. But this is the first cover of its kind that actually delivered on the horror that the cover depicted.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And really, I mean, there's so much you can say about Crisis, and so many of us have tried, but I can just like, if there's just one image I keep going back to, it's that, and that's why this had to be my pick here. I guess you could say specifically the cover, since that's what I'm talking about the most here. But yeah, Crisis on Infinite Earths #7 and everything that happened within is just dynamite good, and that's why it had to be my #1. And now I leave the rest to Murd.
Everybody sit back.
Maestro. Oh, such a build-up. Well, I really don't plan to bang on for too long here, guys. But Crisis on Infinite Earths, 12-issue maxi series, worlds lived, worlds died, etc. It's a story that revealed to me the full scope of what superhero comics are capable of, and it's the graphic draftsmanship of Perez was a very large part of that. And as just about everybody listening will probably already know, that Peter Rios and I already produce a frustratingly infrequently released podcast solely on this 12-issue story and its many attendant texts. And there we go. There's Ian is for YouTube viewers. Ian has just put that Perez and Alex Ross wraparound dust jacket to the original Crisis trade paperback collection. or hardcover release, I should say, which was then released as a poster, as Shane was describing, which is about 5 feet across, and it features a whole lot of characters. And then that's what Crisis on Infinite Earths is about, really. It's a recitation, a celebration, and simultaneously a negation of 50 very prolific years of superhero storytelling. The whole first 50 years of DC Comics. It's a whole superhero continuum. It's like not just one universe. It's multiple different iterations of Earth, each with its own family or pantheon of superhero characters, plus multiple alien planets and other dimensions, god realms, etc., all thrown together in it's this massive system of superhero lore, not only in conversation with itself, but in violent confrontation with itself. Lethal confrontation, even, considering how many characters and how many different segments of the history did not survive the encounter. And Perez, of course, this is the magnum opus for writer Marv Wolfman and for Perez, because more characters than he used in just about any other project he ever did. I guess JLA Avengers might be in the same ballpark, because, as you said, Ian, that too is Crisis level stuff. Certainly.
Oh yeah.
But this is 12 full issues, and he and Wolfman, and all those also involved behind the scene, Len Wein, Bob Greenberger, the people who helped with the research, they dredged up characters who hadn't been seen in decades. And yet Perez, with his highly kinetic style and his meticulous attention to detail, he made these essentially dead characters live again, if only for a few panels before being consigned to limbo and not being seen again for decades more, if ever.
Mm-hmm.
And Perez, in common with lots of other people who've gotten involved in comics over the years, he's a theatrical type. He literally has done theater. He's been an actor, and the way that he makes his characters act and emote on the panel, between facial expressions and body language and so forth, and you can apply what I'm saying here not just to those figures seen in Crisis, but to just about any of the other Perez works that we've been discussing, or anything else that he's ever done. He's just a master at making these characters express what needs to be expressed. He's the drama, the humor, the tragedy, and as Chris says, there's no scale of storytelling that Perez can't bring across in his art. From the macrocosmic to the microcosmic. I mean, we see entire universes fading to white, going up in a conflagration of antimatter, and we also see very quiet personal moments of just internal struggle, of terror, of doubt, of quiet desperation. Like the whole gamut of human experience and well beyond is all put on display in this one monstrously epic story of the death of a fictional system and the birth of another smaller, more compact one, ready for the 80s in its wake. So yeah, there's a lot more to be said about Perez's work in the Crisis Maxi series, but seek out episodes of the Crisis tapes, past and hopefully future, for more detail than there is space in this episode for me to give it. But yeah, this Crisis is Perez to me, and there's nothing else I could possibly put at the top of my list.
Absolutely. For that initial and this was DC's banner at the time, where legends live, and I feel like nothing could be said better about George Perez than legend, and I think that Crisis on Infinite Earths displayed that in spades, while at the same time every other piece of artwork that he touched over the years has displayed that. The man is a legend, and no one will be able to, I feel, replicate that in the history of comics. He's just nobody's Perez.
And I think we should also note, because I think we've all met him at conventions. I've met him at Pittsburgh cons where he used to do sketches for charity.
Yeah.
What a gentleman! Always so convivial, approachable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure when he announced online and wrote about his condition, the dignity and grace in what he wrote, because he's talking about, the the approaching end of his life, and
Yeah.
it's so, and the gratitude he's expressing to his fans. I mean, really one of the great, not as Ian said, legends of the industry, but also as far as I can tell from everything I've experienced and read, also one of the great human beings.
Oh, certainly.
And we're as readers and lovers of the medium, we're all very fortunate to have this body of work, and we touched upon some of it here in this episode. I mean, one of the greatest comic book artists of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So,
to me, when I was getting to know the group that started hanging out at Golden Eagle, and I had read Batman, Spider-Man, and certainly Giffen DeMatteis's Justice League, and G.I. Joe. That was my mainstay up to that point. Getting to know all those guys really opened me up to other possibilities. I want to say that Crisis on Infinite Earths in particular was my introduction into what adult comic book reading was and what it could entail and how much you had to actually think about it and try to understand and enjoy. Just a phenomenal piece of work.
Oh yeah. I have, oh my God. Yes, Chris. as he throws up to the screen a Doom piece that he got.
This is from 2001 at Pittsburgh Comic-Con. We talked before about Iron Man's eyes. Look at those eyes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, that's Victor Von Doom.
Absolutely.
Like, look at those eyes.
Yep.
Right there.
Wow.
Is, if it'll come in, that framed Beetle that I got in 2006, which was the first Pittsburgh Con that we met you guys at, Chris.
That's right.
Wow.
The Comic Geeks Big Table was, I want to say, like, if we were here, George Perez was here.
Yep, I remember vividly.
It was
Absolutely.
just absolutely fantastic to be able to sit there and listen that entire weekend to people and George talk about things. And one other piece of art that I have that was gifted to me by our dear brother Jamie's sister Shauna is the Thor.
Oh, wow.
That Jamie had gotten him to do one time.
My word. Wow.
Shane, get that framed. Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Oof.
And talk about, again, we talked about how Perez draws hair. Like, look at that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Windswept.
Yeah. Now, I do have an image that I want to share that's actually a photo real quick. And that is George has been making the rounds to try to see friends at least one more time before things get worse, unfortunately. And he did get to visit the DC offices in California and sat down and had lunch with Mike Carlin, Marv Wolfman, and Jim Lee. And he also got to see Mark Waid at a separate instance somewhat more recently. And Mark got to post pictures of that as well. And I'm happy to see that he's still out and about and making his rounds as much as possible.
Taking a victory lap, as it were.
Absolutely.
There is a picture that I believe I took at the second New York Comic Con when, Adam, you dressed up as Pariah.
Oh, yes.
And went over to see George, and I'm sure I have it somewhere. I've got to find it and get it posted somewhere again. I can't remember if I have a picture of George with me and that Blue Beetle. I don't think I do, but I think I have one of the Donna Troy that Peter had him do, or asked him to do, I should say, at that convention. And I have to seek that one out too, because that was back before all these fancy cell phones. So that's an actual picture somewhere in the house.
Yep, I've got a photograph, like an actual physical photograph of me in my Pariah rig with George. Shane. I was trying to find it at my apartment, and of course failed because I saw him at a Pittsburgh con within a year of that, and had him autograph it for me. Because
I searched for my copy of it back when I did Peter's special episode, and I couldn't find it then, and I'm still going to search. There's tons of photo albums downstairs in the basement. I'm
pretty sure someone somewhat recently posted it to the supergroup.
That could be too.
Yeah. I think it may have very well been Pants, actually, that posted it somewhat recently. But while I can't find that quite yet, I did find this image, which I think screams the type of personality and sense of humor that Perez has. And it's a picture of George with a Supergirl cosplayer recreating his historic issue 7 image, and beautiful.
Yeah. Didn't that tell you he's a theater person?
Sure is.
Yep. Emotion and emoting right there for you. Well, job well done, gentlemen. And I think we can go around the table if any of us have alternates that we'd like to share before we wrap things up. I'm just going to throw out mine real quick because I don't really have a lot, but I have a few. The inks that George Perez did over Kurt Swan for Superman number 423, whatever happens to Man of Tomorrow.
100%.
Definitely nothing better than that. There was an issue of Justice Society of America that Paul Levitz wrote, that issue 82 back in 2006, which was essentially a Lost Earth 2 story. After the events of Infinite Crisis, where they're reading essentially a diary that was left by the Earth 2 Lois Lane, and that specific issue was drawn by George, and it's a Lost Earth 2 tale, and it's excellent.
I'll be coming to that pretty soon in my reading order.
Excellent.
Needless to say, looking forward to it.
Oh, you better believe it, man! You're gonna love it. The one of the gems of the New 52, although I know that there was some turmoil behind it when he was drawing it, was when he was doing the layouts and breakdowns and writing for Volume 3 of Superman, the first 6 issues of that. So I'll bring that up, and obviously his Wonder Woman run. The fact that he, after Crisis, built a brand new Diana from the ground up, and without that, we would not have the Diana that we had today. In many a way,
he wrote that too, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I have one more, actually 2 more that I'll throw out there. One, a Thunderbolts annual that he did back in 1997. It was only 3 pages, but those 3 pages were dynamite. And World's Finest 1 through 7, another run of the New 52 that he did along with Kevin McGuire, and that crafted the Earth 2 stories of Huntress and it was good stuff. So
it was good.
Yep. All right, I think that's all I have off the top of my head, and if I have anything else, I'll throw it out after you guys have spoken. But Shane, you got any alternates?
I do. One of them would be what I realized at some point, kind of talked about it on Peter's episode. This was unknowingly my first introduction to George Perez art, and I figured it out years later, but this was the first issue that I had ever bought. It was at a comic store in Pottstown called Turk's in the mid 1980s. It was during a Christmas sale. My aunt had given me a gift certificate, and I could buy it was a $25 gift certificate, and he had books on sale for either a dime or 25 cents an issue. And I bought JLA 200 in that sale, which that's a fantastic cover. I know he didn't do much of the interior. Another alternate I have is 2 covers that he did for JLA 203 and 204, which feature the Royal Flush Gang, which is an absolute favorite villain group of mine. I do have also, one of my alternates really is New Teen Titans, but I figured somebody would bring it up. I was really trying not to duplicate things, but I do have my archive volumes of New Teen Titans, and then I have accumulated the trade paperbacks of this also, with the intent of getting rid of these, and I just can't bring myself to do it. Plus, I absolutely love how these smell compared to other books. There's my hardcover of Final Crisis, Legion of 3 Worlds.
Ooh, nice.
I don't know why I wasn't thinking of it. I had it sitting right here, but here's the slipcase Crisis with the cover on it.
Beautiful.
And I do have the 2 of the figures from History of the DC Universe of Batman and Blue Devil, which are based on his artwork.
Oh, nice.
And then it has George Perez artwork on the sides.
Very cool. Very cool.
And the figure that I held up in the beginning, this is the DC Direct Crisis on Infinite Earths Batman.
Oh,
great figure.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Chris.
Actually, I don't have any alternates. I'm good.
All right, Murd.
Okay. Alternate number one for me was Infinity Gauntlet.
That one too. Damn it.
Yeah, I couldn't quite bring myself to put it in my top five because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't have made George's own top five. Because it was kind of a difficult time for him. He was being badgered on both sides. He was trying to do major crossover stories for both publishers at the same time. War of the Gods at DC was going on, which he was even less happy about. And in the end, he just wasn't able to finish the pencils for Infinity Gauntlet. He just got through the first 3 issues and part of the 4th and passed the baton to Ron Lim, who took it the rest of the way and thereafter became the Infinity artist of note. But the first few issues that Perez did, it was cosmic storytelling as Perez did it best, and it got the story and the whole Infinity trilogy off to a great start. And that was kind of the beginnings of what I loved most about comic books in general was Starlin's Infinity stuff at Marvel at that time, and
Certainly.
Perez helped get that ball rolling.
Adam, what year did that? What year did that come out?
I believe it was 1990.
Okay. I was going to a comic store in King of Prussia at the time, one that was in the mall. I think it was Comics and More at that time. And I was kind of friendly with the one worker there. I don't know if he was the owner or what. And I have absolutely no idea why he did this. I walked in one day to pick up some books that I had a little subscription there. And he said, "Hey, I've got something special for you. Hold on." And he went to the back, came out with an autographed copy of number 1 that I have in my box back there somewhere. So that first issue has something special for me. Again, I think his name was Anthony. I never had any idea why he did it. I mean, it wasn't like I was going there for years, but I would talk to him at length when I went there, and he just went into the back and brought out and said, "Here, put this in your bag. This is just for you."
Huh. An autographed copy of Infinity Gauntlet number 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's something.
Very nice of that guy.
It's really neat.
Let's see. I've also got, Ian mentioned the inks that George did for Superman number 423, part 1 of Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. You could put a new sheen on the old master Kurt Swan's pencils. I also have from Shane's list The Brave and the Bold, the first 10 or so issues of that. Something that I hope to be able to add to my list in the future, Crimson Plague number 1 and 2.
Crimson
Plague thing that Perez both wrote and drew for the quickly defunct Guerrilla Comics line.
Mm-hmm.
Guerrilla Comics.
That's about an alien lady with toxic blood, I think was the premise. That's something I found both issues of that at a Pittsburgh con a few years ago. I don't think they're that hard to come by, but I haven't read them yet. But I couldn't, in good conscience, put them in my top 5, having not actually read them. So, but they're there for the future. And I've also got here a few issues of Marvel 2-in-1 that he did back in the 70s.
Wow.
Some Project Pegasus stories, part of the Serpent Crown affair, all of them written by Mark Gruenwald and or Ralph Macchio. And finally, Marvel Premiere number 45 and 46, featuring the Man-Wolf as Star God.
Yes. I knew you'd pick this one up.
There we are.
Yep.
Yes.
I saw that one. I saw that one coming from a mile away, Murd, so I had that one ready.
1978. Oh, look at that.
It's so good to be understood.
Yes. I have to be honest, I don't know that I ever saw that before.
I've seen this cover and I'm not even sure where or why, but when I did, I saw the like heavy metal like album that this must be.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Look at those wristbands.
I mean, that to me, that's something out of Thundar the Barbarian.
Yes.
That's 1978, baby. That's what that is.
That's awesome.
My favorite grocery space opera starring an albino werewolf, and Perez drew it.
Yeah.
That could be like
cool.
the art like on a video game, like a stand-up video game console in an arcade.
Oh,
yeah.
Better yet, yeah.
Yeah. Or even better, like one of those NES cartridges where the cartridge artwork looked absolutely nothing like the artwork of the game itself.
Yeah. Now that would be cool if they put that character in a Marvel movie somewhere along the way.
Man-Wolf? Yeah, I could see that.
Why
I'd pay
not?
for that, sure.
Yeah. You can be in a bar in outer space somewhere.
Look at these like lizard horses. God.
Yeah.
Winged lizard horses, no less.
Stunning good times.
Yeah, he would fit in well with the Guardians of the Galaxy, don't you think?
Yeah.
He would. Yes, you're absolutely right. And somewhere JJ is going, what happened to my son?
It's all Spider-Man's fault.
Oh boy.
Uh,
All right. Well, I'm looking through his roster here, and I've got one more for you. And I don't know if he would call it one of his seminal works, but damn it, it happened. And let's just remember that it did. Ladies and gentlemen, Ultra Force Avengers.
I remember it well.
Oh yeah,
The cosmic, the Starlin cosmic checkerboard image.
no, I don't know that I saw that either. Wow.
Oh, I have that in my collection. I absolutely do.
Yeah, I love this cover. I mean, the Ultra Force or the Ultra Force, like they're not exactly the most stunning nor well remembered part of comic book history at this point. Although I do remember them having a knockoff of X-Men the Animated Series on the USA Network for a while.
Mhm.
But this is a heck of a cover.
Wow.
That's good stuff. All right, gentlemen. I think we've shot our bolt. And
we have indeed.
Here's to you, George.
Mm.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
You indeed for everything that you've done.
Yep, and thanks be to the Almighty that you're still alive to
Mhm.
receive all the living eulogies that are pouring out.
Yeah, which when you think about that, most people don't
Yeah.
have that opportunity when they pass.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Certainly.
It's a major blessing that he's having the opportunity to get his affairs in order, say all of his goodbyes, and also to hear the goodbyes that are being said to him from those who have been influenced by his work in so many ways.
Absolutely. Yep. All righty, gentlemen. Well, I think we're at the end of our time here, so I will just remind all of you, the listeners, once again, that we thank you so much for your continued support of the show. And if you would like to donate to the show or be a regular patron, you could do so over at patreon.com/comicgeekspeak. And we thank you so much for that. And I thank Shane for giving the rest of the end of episode announcements. So Shane, over to you.
Visit us at comicgeekspeak.com to send us an email. The address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. To leave a voicemail, the number is 267-702-6642. Stop by thecomicforums.vanillacommunity.com and let us know what you think, what you have as your favorite George Perez moments. Follow us at YouTube on youtube.com/comicgeekspeak. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. And as always, we are uniting the world, mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.